Kia ora, salam, namaste, sat sri akal. I'm your host Ajay Vasisht with The Weekender on Sunday. Today, our guest is the Honorable Phil Twyford. Without getting into any further delay, we'll go and talk to the gentleman who is currently the Minister for Economic Development and Urban Development and Transport. And these are mantles he's held on a very uneasy head, I would say, or the crown hasn't sat very, very easy on the head. Without further ado, welcome to The Weekender on Sunday. Phil, how are you doing today?
Hi, Ajay. I'm well. Thanks for having me along. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always a pleasure having somebody that's working on so many interesting things for the country and in the government. How are you doing? How are you finding the post-lockdown blues?
Actually, I think we're kind of finding our equilibrium after that extraordinary 6 weeks when the country was in lockdown and life changed. I think feels like life changed permanently. It was an extraordinary time to be in government. We were making decisions that would normally take months to develop the policy, debate it, think it through, argue it out, and design it, and then implement it. Those kind of decisions were being made in days, literally. As the government grappled with how to deal with the pandemic. And then, of course, all of the economic repercussions of COVID-19 and the lockdown came to the fore. And we've been incredibly focused on dealing with that. And I suppose, at this point in time, I'm really struck by the fact that, we went hard and we went early very deliberately because we knew we had an opportunity to stop the virus in its tracks. And we went from having one of the most severe and restrictive lockdowns in the world in the space of about a month. As we dropped down to level 2 and level 1, we became one of the freest and least restricted countries, including in terms of the economic activity, anywhere in the world. So
and that's
a remarkable time.
Yeah, and I think that's been really not so much the stroke of luck, but in hindsight, it's the only thing that's kind of the benefit that we've got out of that 5 million people lockdown, as it were. We are able to carry on with life without all the other impediments that other countries are in meltdown with at the moment.
And you see countries across Asia, North America, and Europe who are reopening their public life, their economies, because the stress of staying in lockdown is unbearable for too long. But they're doing it in a situation where they have often a lot of community transmission of the virus. And if you look in the States at the moment, in some parts of the US, COVID-19 is still moving through their country like wildfire, and yet they're opening up. So that's a tough thing for any country to go through. So we're very fortunate at the moment. And the big resolve that we have right now is to bring the same level of focus and discipline to the economy and to the economic recovery as the country was able to bring to the initial lockdown and the response to the virus.
So what would you give to be able to rewind it all to the days of that housing challenge and have those kind of decisions made with the RMA fixed up in a 4-week or 6-week period?
Well, I was just thinking about this actually this afternoon, Ajay. The housing crisis has been for the last decade, really, it's been one of the very difficult challenges that New Zealand has been grappling with. And I more than anybody, I think.
I was going to say, we don't want to put you on the spot, but that must be one of the worst legacies you want to leave behind.
Oh, look, I'm happy to talk about it, Ajay. So it's been an incredibly difficult problem that the country's been dealing with. But I think, interestingly, right now, and it's one of the legacies of COVID, is that we may actually have an opportunity now to crack this problem. And let me explain why. So one of the really difficult issues with the housing crisis has been the surging demand has constantly outstripped supply. Whatever the government did was often dwarfed by the sheer economic forces in the housing market that were driving both the shortage of houses and very, very high prices. Well, so right now the economy's taken a massive hit, and we all no one thinks that's a good thing, right? There are huge problems, but actually, possibly one small side effect is that the housing market has been at least temporarily stilled or paused.
Yes. Come off the boil a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that has been constantly driving the excess demand over supply over the last decade has been immigration. Now, for better or worse, there isn't going to be much in the way of immigration for the next few years. That, I think, is undoubtedly one of the effects of COVID-19 and the fact that we have had to close the borders.
Yes.
So one of the big sources of demand has been taken away. Now, if we can change all of the policy settings around housing, and I've been working as Minister of Urban Development, my mission in life for the last couple of years has been to change the policies around infrastructure supply and the planning rules to allow our housing market to respond to demand.
But surely, I think the question on everybody's lips, and if I may be so impolite and interject, has been the two biggest flagpole policies that the incoming Labour government in 2017 brought to the fore was housing, 10,000 a year, about 100,000 in 10 years, and the light rail project, and they have both fallen by the wayside. Now, on a personal level, I get it. It's massive. How do you make such kind of changes happen? But what's been the biggest bugbear? What is the thing that has actually derailed you, for want of a better phrase? Pardon the pun.
Let's come back to light rail because I want to talk about that. But
is it Winston? Is it Winston that derailed it?
Let's first deal with KiwiBuild.
Yes.
Now, KiwiBuild was a high-profile policy, but it was only ever one slice of a very big housing reform agenda. The government, working with the private sector to build affordable homes, even at the numbers that we committed to, was only ever going to be a small part of the supply that was needed. And it was never going to solve the structural problems in the market. That is, the planning rules that restrict development and the lack of infrastructure to allow the private sector to build more homes. So, look, I have no problem, Ajay, with owning up, putting my hand up and saying, under my watch, we failed to deliver on the promises we made with KiwiBuild. And I've paid the price for that. And it'll always be on my shoulders, right? And I accept that. That's politics, and you have to be accountable for whether you succeed or fail. But look, I'm very proud of what we've achieved as a government across the board with housing. So we've built more houses, state houses, through Kainga Ora in less than 3 years than National built in the entire 9 years they were in government. And in fact, if they'd been building state houses at the rate we have, we would not have the shortage of state houses that we have now. So we've completely turned that around. We recently committed to another 8,000 state houses and $5 billion worth of borrowing to build them.
What's the gap between the two? Why can you build state houses but not other KiwiBuild houses?
Through the KiwiBuild program, relied on working with the private sector. We designed it as a partnership with developers to incentivize them to build more affordable homes. You know, the business model for residential developers in New Zealand is basically built around building a drip feeding into the market, small numbers of more expensive homes. And what we tried to do was get the developers to move off that business model and build larger numbers of more affordable homes. And it was much harder than we expected to do that. But look, it hasn't deterred us from building more state houses. We brought in, under my watch, Ajay, we brought in healthy home standards that will require all rental properties to be warm and dry, because we're sick of sending our kids off to hospital with respiratory infections every winter. Chris Farfoy, who took over from me, he's modernising the tenancy laws to give renters more security of tenure. So these are all policies I'm very proud of, and actually accepting that KiwiBuild did not deliver on the early promise. We've done a lot in housing and have a lot to be proud of.
So on Kiwi Rail, this has got to be the worst pen stroke by Winston in that secret letter that nobody wants to talk about, including you. What is so difficult in that letter that the rest of the public can't handle, that they couldn't handle during lockdown?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not a matter of it being the contents are not shocking or scandalous. But
Right.
you know, in our form of government, RJ, under MMP,
Yes.
everything we do, every law we take to the Parliament, every paper we take to Cabinet, relies on a process of consultation between ministers and between the three parties.
But why is that process not open? Why is that process not open? When they come looking for the votes, when all the parties come looking for the votes, they want all the transparency, all the things they want to pitch, and all of the things they will do for you. But when you want to do these internal deals, none of that comes forward. Why is that not a remit of a democracy?
So no government since MMP has released the correspondence that is part of.
So I'm not arguing with you on that. I'm saying going forward in a changed COVID world, why shouldn't there be more transparency from government and from coalition partners?
I'll tell you why. Because
they shouldn't be.
when decisions are made, when we make a decision in Cabinet, right?
Yes.
We are collectively accountable for the final decision.
Yes.
But in the lead up to that process, we often argue like cats and dogs. And that's not just between the MMP parties, New Zealand First, the Greens, Labour. It's actually between ministers. We have sometimes ferocious arguments amongst ourselves as we thrash out agreement on the policies. Now, if we had to release all of that and make all of that transparent, right, then after we've made a decision, the media would be constantly litigating the previous discussion and saying, well, you said that then, what changed now? Your colleague said this, but you said that, right? When we're, as cabinet ministers, we have to stand up after cabinet's made a decision and say, hand on heart, we are collectively responsible and accountable for the decisions that are made, regardless of our personal views or the decisions or the positions that we took the day before, or a week ago.
Would you say that letter from Winston, which is probably a political move just pre-elections, wasn't the thing that scarpered it? Or
No. The letter's irrelevant.
Right.
We have, but the issue here is that we had a policy that we're very committed to. Labour believes that building a modern rapid transit system is probably the most important thing we can do to support the growth of Auckland as our New Zealand's only international city and city of scale. Right?
Yes.
If we don't build a rapid transit system, then we are consigning future generations to a future of gridlock on the roads. All right, that's
in a short answer. Do you think right now putting it on hold is probably a good thing in a post-COVID lockdown world, because we're not going to see the international tourist numbers and international travel regain ground much for a while?
Growth trajectory. It's going to slow down for a little while, mostly because of the borders being closed. But the future is for New Zealand is of Auckland being our major city, high growth. We have to invest in the infrastructure that a modern city needs. But look, New Zealand First, that's just not their mindset. It's not their philosophy. And I always hoped and I believed we would eventually get them across the line on this policy, but
that's a debatable. I mean, you're right in being able to say that, but they were happy to try and take a $1 to $3 billion fund to spend with Shane Jones in the regions, but not so much with trying to do light rail for Auckland. Maybe Auckland's the not so liked cousin by the rest of the country or by these MMP stakeholders. Anyway, moving on from that. Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, so, I mean, both of those policies, both of those projects, whether the housing or the rail they've been put to the side. We'll see what happens after the election. It may or may not have an impact on Labour going into the elections. Now, the thing
RJ,
the
light rail, RJ, has not been put to one side. So Cabinet basically we'd set up a process to consider the proposal we received from the New Zealand Super Fund and their Canadian partners, right? And we created a competitive process to consider those options. That a stop's been put to that process, but Cabinet has referred the project to the Ministry of Transport and asked it to carry on developing it. So that work
Excellent.
continues. And I have every expectation that if Labor's fortunate enough to form a government after the election, we will proceed with speed on building the light rail project.
Well, that's the only problem. We were proceeding with speed to a 2021 deadline for getting that project. So I think it's been a letdown. But moving on from that, because there's no point in looking backwards too much now. You've just been quoted as the economic development minister that the government will be granting border exemptions and has in fact done quite a few. For instance, to the syndicate teams who will challenge the Emirates Team New Zealand for the 36 America's Cup. And it's expected to create a massive spin-off for New Zealand, something like $100 million, several teams, probably going to be, again, till 2021, it'll pump a lot of money into the economy. We don't have an issue with that. We've loved the America's Cup. We get in behind it as a country, from the Red Sox to whenever we kind of had the hull break or something else happen. We just, it's a very emotional ride. But on a slightly different approach, does this openness at the borders, does this include being able to get in students from overseas too? Which is, after all, a huge market, like $4 to $5 billion mark from those two giants, India and China. Sure. Is there some willingness in the government to say, we'll let the students come and they can quarantine for the 14 days on their own cost, but let them at least come and study?
Yeah. So, Ajay, I had, as Economic Development Minister, I had for a short window of time, about 6 weeks, I had the job of considering and signing off essential workers who came in as exceptions to the border being closed. And yes. It was a very, very narrow set of criteria and a very high benchmark that businesses would have to get over to demonstrate that they had a strong case to come in, even though the border was closed. And during that time, 90%, 9 out of 10 people who came through the border at that time were not essential workers coming in to boost the economy. They were New Zealanders returning from overseas, and people coming in for humanitarian reasons, and essential health workers. So essentially the border's closed. We're letting in a small number of people, and even a small fraction of those, 10% of the people coming in, were for economic reasons. And people had to show, the businesses who were applying had to show not just that it would it might inconvenience their business, but it would have a major impact on investment, on employment, or the supply chain. And so we signed off a bunch of people, including some, there were some film people who came in to resume the filming of a couple of big film projects that had to stop when the lockdown happened. If we hadn't let those people in, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment would have been lost. We also let people who came in who fixed sewage pipes in Wellington, people who installed a ski lift at one of the ski fields, people who commissioned a wind turbine on a wind farm.
So would the same argument not apply to the education sector? At $4 or $5 billion a year, it's probably employing far more people than Avatar or the America's Cup ever would.
Yeah, it wouldn't. But the government.
So it's a bang for buck. It's a bang for buck equation.
No, the equation is that the border's closed right now.
Right.
We simply don't have the capacity to bring large numbers of people into the country at the moment. And in fact, at the moment, we have the capacity for about 250 to 300 people a day. Or about 3,000 in quarantine at any one time. Now, what's happening is that thousands of New Zealanders are coming home. They're coming home from India. They're coming home from Australia. They're coming home from the UK. They were stranded outside the country. They want to come back. And actually, the government is working overtime at the moment to build more quarantine capacity so we can accommodate these Kiwis who are coming back into the country. So in actual fact, we are running as fast as we can to support Kiwis coming back to the country. And unfortunately, for me as Economic Development Minister, I would like to see a lot more people coming in for economic reasons because we need to boost the economy. But the reality is we're going to be really hard pressed I think, to bring in very many at all.
So we've just had some online feedback from one of our viewers suggesting, why don't you let the universities and the educational institutions provide that backup in terms of the quarantining? Instead of the 200, you could go to 20,000 a day if everybody just chipped in together, and that's the whole point of doing it. Is that a possibility? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean,
this is not my responsibility as Minister of Economic Development. It's the Minister of Education, Chris Hipkins.
Yes.
So he speaks for the government on this, but I'll do my best to reflect his view on this and his position and that of the Health Minister.
So last but not least, we've actually got the Minister of Immigration coming here a bit later as well. So I'm sure that will be something we'll be asking him as well. Going forward, we are already in election mode. You had, I think, your volunteers and your whole team of the election campaign team in your offices last week. And you are still number 4 on that Labour Party list. Given what has happened, transpired in the last 3 years, from the debacle of the housing policy and this light rail kind of going off the rails for now, where do you think you'll be post-election as a party and as yourself?
So as a party, Ajay, I think we're in pretty good shape at the moment, but we can't take anything for granted. So if
you'd have to mess up pretty bad in order to give up the gains from the COVID-19 lockdown story.
Well, if you look at the Colmar-Brunton poll last week,
yes,
the centre left had a 15-point lead, 1-5.
Yes,
point
yes.
But it's a volatile situation we're in at the moment, and I don't think we take anything for granted. And our position is that we've made in the last 3 years huge amounts of progress across New Zealand and across multiple policy areas, and we want to be able to continue building on that progress. So that's the pitch that the Prime Minister will take into the election campaign, and of course be right behind her. And we want the opportunity to have a progressive centre-left government that can deliver on the things that New Zealand really needs. And we're not perfect, not everything's worked, but if you look across the board at health, education, the economy, infrastructure, I think we've made a huge step forward for New Zealand. As for my place in that, Ajay, there's only one person who makes that decision, and that's the Prime Minister. And we all serve at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. That's the way our system of government works. And
are you on a good wicket then, or are you in the right coach of that light rail bogey?
Look, light rail is a policy that we're utterly committed to. We haven't been able to implement it, and that's a result of New Zealand First. It's the reality of MP. But I tell you this, we'll have another crack after the election. I hope to be there pushing the policy.
So predict some numbers for us. Are you coming in with a coalition again, or are you coming in without the need for one?
No, look, I wouldn't. It would be fool's gold to make a prediction this far out from the election. But I think that we saw a poll. We saw the Horizon Ipsos poll about 10 days ago, which said 80% plus of Kiwis believe that Jacinda Ardern's government is best placed to manage the economic recovery. And I think Kiwis not only appreciate the way that we, under Jacinda's leadership, tackled the public health crisis, but we have absolutely front-footed the economic recovery. From day one with the wage subsidy, we've put $12 billion out there into businesses to keep people in jobs. And we followed up with a $50 billion recovery plan for New Zealand. So I think New Zealand.
So we need it. I would personally say yes. It was brilliant. It was brilliant from every person's perspective within New Zealand. But we're also going to have a hell of a debt, and for that we'll talk to you another time. We're on a limited time at the moment, and I really appreciate your coming on a Sunday and having a chat with us. And you are still very positive and looking forward to the ruckus that's going to be this election. All the best.
All right, Ajay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. That was Minister Phil Twyford, and we hope to be able to catch up with him another time, not in the not too distant future. Now, moving on. As is the want of every business, ours needs sponsors and people who support us. And I'd like to mention to you about Business Launchpad. They are chartered accountants who can assist business owners with new business setups, annual accounting and tax compliance, business plans, cash flows and forecasts, IRD tax problems, property tax matters, accounting, tax, and business services under one roof. So if you're struggling to pay your taxes or are in trouble with the IRD, you need to contact Business Launchpad CA. They can negotiate with the IRD, provide you with options suitable to your needs, which will save you on interest and penalties charged by the IRD. How can you contact them? You can talk to Ankur on 09 520 1515 or just go and visit their site with lots of information on there, www.bizlaunchpad.co.nz. Now, moving on from sponsors and moving on from Minister Phil Twyford, we won't be able to go into a very long-winded catch-up today. थोड़ा हिंदुस्तानी में भी बात करने की आपसे उम्मीद थी और थोड़ा अंग्रेजी में भी बात करने की आपसे उम्मीद थी. तो in some interesting news that happened in New Zealand, and it's sports as usual that has brought a smile to our face. Last week, we got an upbeat news that we will be hosting the FIFA Women's World Cup with Australia in 2023. So congratulations are in order to New Zealand Football and Football Federation Australia for their excellent teamwork, which helped make this happen. In a world gone awry with COVID-19, this is great news. And, you know, it kind of cements our reputation as a can-do country that can host major sporting events and, you know, and kick the corona out as well. It's also an important milestone in raising the value and visibility of women's sport in New Zealand. So, hurrah for that. Of course, there will be benefits in terms of economic impact, international profile, and bringing our communities together. However, it will also remain challenging to figure out how to pull it all off, you know, given that the corona is still around. But hopefully, fingers crossed, there's plenty of time. And let's keep to the sports theme for a minute. हिंदुस्तान में तो सबसे बड़ी स्पोर्ट क्या है? क्रिकेट. और क्रिकेट के बादशाह इस समय कौन होंगे? हालांकि क्रिकेट नहीं खेली जा रही. That has to be Virat Kohli. Now, what Virat Kohli has achieved in the last 10 years is, I think the word should be astonishing. विराट कोहली ने पिछले 10 सालों में जो हासिल किया है वह हैरान करने वाला है. And I'm quoting another cricketer by the name of Karun Nair. तो करुण नायर जानते होंगे आप, शायद कुछ लोगों को तो नाम पता ही होगा. ये टेस्ट क्रिकेट में 13 शतक जड़ने की रिकॉर्ड अपने नाम जड़ चुके हैं. एंड करुण नायर ने विराट की काफी तारीफ भी करी है. उन्होंने विराट को कंपेयर किया रोनाल्डो के साथ. उनसे तुलना करते हुए कहा कि कप्तान में जो कुछ हासिल किया है वो लाजवाब है. करुण नायर ने उस वक्त रिकॉर्ड बुक में अपना नाम दर्ज किया था जब वीरेंद्र सहवाग के बाद 2016 में चिपॉक पर इंग्लैंड के खिलाफ टेस्ट में 13 शतक बनाने वाले केवल दूसरे भारतीय बने थे वो. कैन यू इमेजिन दैट? जस्ट टू बी द सेकंड इंडियन टू डू अ ट्रिपल टर्न. हालांकि वे काफी वक्त से टीम इंडिया में कमबैक के लिए संघर्ष कर रहे हैं. दुनिया भर में कई खिलाड़ियों की तरह करुण भी गैर क्रिकेट खिलाड़ियों से प्रेरणा लेते हैं. So, you know, he's obviously got Cristiano Ronaldo to look up to, but he says, if I look to people at home and people from the cricketing world, it has to be Virat Kohli. And he said all this in a YouTube channel. So, you know, I mean, that seems like another place that we all go to for our news. पर जब उनसे पूछा गया कि क्या करुण रोनाल्डो के साथ किसी भी भारतीय क्रिकेटर के साथ समानताएं देखते हैं, तो उन्होंने कहा, I don't think you can really compare because the sports are different. But जहां तक उन्हें लगता है, विराट कोहली का नाम टॉप पे आता है. उन्होंने कहा कि विराट कोहली ने जो भी अब तक हासिल किया है, it shows that he's a world class player. And if we are going to actually stay in the game and cricket starts again, you'll find out that Virat can probably top most of the records set by most of the other Indian cricketers. In fact, even Sachin Tendulkar's records may not be that sacred anymore if Virat can get in and start scoring runs again. So, उसके अलावा आज की कार्यक्रम को यहीं पर खत्म करने के लिए इजाजत लेते हैं आपसे और उम्मीद करते हैं कि आपने आज का शो भी एंजॉय किया. जाते जाते from our WhatsApp shares, I might get into a little bit of hot water for this. बीवी ने पूछा, What surprises you most about the coronavirus, honey? और पति का जवाब, अरे भगवान, इसने तो वो कर डाला जो आज तक कोई बीवी नहीं कर पाई और अब उनको मार पड़ने वाली है. क्या सब स्पोर्ट्स कैंसिल कर दिए, सब बार बंद कर दिए, एंड टू टॉप इट ऑल ऑफ, सारे के सारे मर्द घर में भी आज के टिक गए. You know, this is the damn virus that has made sure that even all the men stayed at home. Whether you found that funny or not, I have no idea, but it's true. It has definitely made sure that all the men stayed at home. आप सब अपना ख्याल रखें, जहां भी हैं, safe रहें, स्वस्थ रहें. I'm your host Ajay Vasisht, and this has been the Sunday Weekender on Sunday. I will see you next Sunday. For now, abhi bhi, we are here, happy and healthy in the safest country दुनिया भर में. Kia ora, salam, namaste, sat sri akal. Till next time.